Welcome, dreamer. You're listening to Evernight Stories, a quiet place for gentle tales and peaceful dreams. Make yourself comfortable. It's time to rest. Before we begin, if these calm moments mean something to you, consider subscribing so the next story finds you easily. Tonight, we find ourselves wandering through a quiet corner of Vienna, a place where cobblestone streets hold the last warmth of daylight, and evening settles softly against tall windows, bathed in golden light. Take a slow breath. Let the scent of lavender and cool night air wrap gently around your thoughts. Here, tucked between a tiny art studio and a cafe that never turns off its piano, stands a small flower shop named Lavendel Licht. Lavender and light. And inside, a young florist is closing her day with the same tender care she gives to every bloom that passes through her hands. It is early spring in Vienna, and dusk drifts over the artist's district like a soft violet veil. Shops along the narrow street glow with warm amber through their tall glass fronts. A violin maker's workshop with wood shavings curled on the floor. A painter's studio where half-finished canvases lean against the wall. And a tiny cafe where a pianist practices gentle scales that melt out into the street. Among them, Mara's flower shop glows the warmest. Inside, rows of glass vases catch the evening light, each one holding stems trimmed neatly to drink the last water of the day. Lavender fills the air, its soft, calming scent rising from bundles tied with twine and baskets lined with parchment. Mara moves slowly through the shop, her apron brushed with petals, her hands careful and sure. She gathers fallen blossoms from the counter, dips her scissors into cool water, and hums a nearly silent tune that seems to blend with the pianist upstairs. Outside, the street grows quieter. Carriages roll away, shutters close, and the lamp posts flicker to life. Inside the small flower shop, warm light rests on lavender stems, and the soft breath of Vienna night slips gently beneath the door. When the street outside finally settles into its evening quiet, Mara begins her nightly ritual, a series of small, gentle tasks that bring the flower shop back into calm order. She trims the last stems of the day, letting soft petals fall into a shallow ceramic bowl. she keeps specifically for flowers that deserved a softer landing. She wipes the counters with lavender water, the scent blooming fresh for a moment, before melting back into the air already thick with floral sweetness. A kettle hums softly upstairs in her small apartment, the sound drifting down the staircase like a familiar lullaby. Most nights, she makes chamomile tea and reads beside the window while listening to the pianist in the cafe rehearse late into the night. But tonight feels a little different as she steps outside to bring in the last display of potted herbs. She notices something leaning against the wall beside her door. A violin, old and weathered, its varnish softened by years of use, and its strings slightly loosened from the cold. There is no case, no note, no sign of who left it there. Mara crouches, brushing a fingertip along the curved edge of its body. The wood is warmer than she expects, as though it had been played not long ago. She hesitates for only a moment before lifting it gently into her arms. "Can't leave you in the night air," she murmurs, voice soft as lavender dust. And with that, she carries the silent violin into the warm glow of the shop. Mara brings the violin inside and sets it gently on the wooden counter, beside a fresh bundle of lavender. The shop is quiet now, the kind of quiet that feels full, like a breath held in warm hands. She runs a soft cloth along the violin's body, dusting off the thin layer of city air that clung to it outside. As she polishes the curve of its neck, her fingertips brush the strings. They vibrate, just barely, a faint, trembling hum, so soft it might have been imagined. But the sound is real, delicate, almost shy. Mara pauses, her hand hovering above the wood. She has never played violin, and she knows enough to understand that strings should not move on their own. A small gust of evening wind slips through the half-open window, brushing past the lavender bundles and stirring their scent into the room. The violin hums again, a whisper of a note, more breath than sound, as if acknowledging her care. Mara's lips soften into a smile. "Well," she murmurs, "I suppose you're not so silent after all." The next morning, just as Mara unlocks the front door and props it open to let in the early spring light, the bell above the frame jingles softly, An older painter from the studio across the street steps inside, coat dusted with flecks of dried paint, hands stained with shades of ochre and blue. He pauses when he notices the violin, resting among the bundles of lavender and baby's breath. Its warm wooden body glows softly against the pale lilac colors surrounding it. "Ah," he says, eyes narrowing with gentle recognition. "That looks familiar." Mara turns, curious. "You know who it belonged to?" The painter nods slowly. "There was a young violinist who lived in this quarter. Kind soul, always leaving flowers on my windowsill after long nights of practice. He used to stop by your shop too, left little bouquets by your door when you first opened." Mara blinks, surprised by the warmth rising in her chest. She remembers small bunches of wildflowers she sometimes found outside. Delicate, thoughtful things she assumed someone misplaced or left by chance. "He left Vienna last winter," the painter continues. "No one knows where he went, but he loved that violin." Mara looks at the instrument again, resting gently among lavender stems, as if it had always belonged there. The painter smiles softly. Seems it found its way back to someone who will treat it kindly. A breeze slips in through the open door. The lavender sways, and for a brief moment, the violin's strings shimmer with a trembling whisper, like a secret greeting carried on the wind. Evening settles again over the artist district, soft and unhurried, as though Vienna itself has chosen to close its eyes for a moment. The street outside glows with warm gas lamps, their golden halos puddling onto the cobblestones like small circles of honeyed light. Inside Lavendel Licht, Mara moves quietly between vases and wooden crates, preparing the shop for another gentle night. She always loves this hour, the time when daylight fades, but the world has not fully surrendered to night, when everything seems painted in shades of lilac, honey, and softened blue. Tonight, the violin rests on the center counter, nestled in a bed of fresh lavender sprig. The purple blooms surround its warm maple body like a soft, fragrant nest. A few petals cling to the strings, and Mara brushes them away with delicate care, her fingertips grazing the curve of the instrument as though greeting an old friend. The room is a tapestry of gentle sounds. The pianist in the cafe upstairs practices slow arpeggios, each note drifting down through the narrow floorboards in a golden trickle of sound. Outside, a carriage rolls past, its wheels clicking rhythmically over the stones before fading into the distance. Closer still, the quiet rustle of flowers as Mara adjusts each bundle joins the soft clink of glass vases touching one another. And beneath everything, as faint as a memory not yet spoken, the violin hums a soft resonance whenever the breeze brushes through the open window. Not music, not a melody, just presence. Mara pauses mid-motion whenever she feels that subtle vibration under her fingertips. It is like brushing against a heartbeat that isn't quite sound, but isn't silence either. She pours water into a wide ceramic bowl, the ripples catching reflections of the amber shop lights. Cut stems fall into the water with small floating sighs. She arranges roses, tucking them gently among eucalyptus branches, then closes her eyes for a brief moment to let their scent rise. Warm, soft, fresh, like morning petals brushed with dew. On the counter, the lavender gives its own steady fragrance, a cool, calming sweetness that seeps gradually into the air until the entire shop feels like a single long exhale. Mara lights a small beeswax candle beside the violin. Its flame flickers slowly, casting buttery gold onto the instrument's polished wood and illuminating the faint scratches that tell the story of years of music. As she watches the candlelight dance, Mara remembers the simple bouquets that used to appear at her door, wild violets in spring, rose hips in autumn, and once a single stem of lavender tied with twine, exactly like the ones she arranges now. She had never known who left them, but now, seeing the violin surrounded by lavender, she feels warmth bloom quietly behind her ribs, a small flutter, like a note plucked on a string. Far above, the pianist begins a new piece, a slow, drifting tune that seems to hang in the air like a silk ribbon. Mara moves with it. She folds brown paper around a bouquet, the soft crackle matching the piano's gentle rhythm. She dips her scissors in water, wiping them dry on a linen cloth, embroidered with tiny violets her mother once stitched. She breathes deeply. Lavender, rose, chamomile, eucalyptus. Her entire world is made of scents that soothe, comfort, and soften the sharp edges of life. The violin hums again, a faint vibration whenever she passes near it, with a lit lantern or warm cup of tea. She laughs under her breath, a small sound, barely more than a smile carried on air. You're awake tonight, aren't you? The violin does not answer in any way a musician would recognize. But its wood seems to glow with a quiet warmth, a gentle gratitude. Mara sits on the small stool behind the counter, wrapping her hands around a cup of steaming chamomile. The rising vapor curls upward in slow, ghost-like ribbons that catch the candlelight. She watches them drift, feeling her breath match their pace. She closes her eyes, and in that stillness, shaped by soft piano, warm candle glow, lavender drifting through the air, and the faint hum of the violin, Mara feels something she hasn't felt in a long while. The sense of being quietly accompanied. Not by someone who speaks, not by someone she knows, but by the tenderness she gives, finding its way back to her. She opens her eyes to the violin, its strings resting lightly against the purple flowers beneath it. A stray breeze slips through the window, barely enough to move a petal, but the violin responds, a trembling whisper, like a single delicate note played just for her. Mara places her cup down and draws closer. She doesn't touch the strings or try to coax sound from them. She simply rests her hand on the warm wooden back, feeling the faint echo of a heartbeat that is not hers yet feels entirely familiar. And in that moment, surrounded by the breathing warmth of flowers and the soft song of the evening, the violin does not feel like something forgotten or abandoned. It feels found, like the shop, like Mara, like the gentle things in life that don't make noise unless someone listens closely. As the candle burns lower, its small golden flame flickering gently against the glass, Mara stays beside the violin, her hand still resting on its warm wooden back. For a long moment, she simply listens, not for music, but for the near silent presence the violin carries, like a memory breathing through the room. She thinks of all the flowers she has cared for over the years. Fragile stems revived in fresh water. Drooping petals lifted by her careful touch. Bunches arranged with the soft intention that someone, somewhere, would feel a little lighter receiving them. She has spent so much time tending quiet things that never speak back. Yet here is something once cherished, carried through concerts and cold winters, held close by hands that loved music, now responding to her gentleness in its own delicate way. And she realizes, with a warmth that spreads slowly through her chest, that the violin's faint hum isn't a mystery to be solved or magic to be feared. It is simply gratitude, a soft echo of care meeting care, a reminder that tenderness, even when offered quietly, never disappears. Mara smiles, feeling the truth settle into her heart, like a petal drifting to rest. The next afternoon, as sunlight spills through the tall windows in soft golden sheets, a small girl from the nearby music school steps timidly into the shop. She's holding a practice book to her chest and glancing around with the shy curiosity of someone drawn in by something she can't quite name. Her eyes land on the violin, nestled among the lavender. She inhales sharply, a little breath of wonder. "May I?" she whispers, fingers hovering just above the strings. Mara nods, lifting the violin carefully and placing it in the girl's waiting hands. The child draws the bow in a single trembling stroke. A soft note blooms, warm, tender, as though the violin is waking from a very gentle sleep. Mara smiles as the girl clutches the instrument close, cradling it as if she has found something precious. Evening drifts once more across the artist district, soft and pale as a silk scarf carried by the wind. The lamps along the cobblestone street glow early tonight, casting long amber pools of light where shadows stretch out gently to rest. Inside the shop, the lavender bundles breathe their calming scent into the warm, golden air. Mara moves slowly through the room, collecting stray petals, loosening the ribbons around fresh bouquets, and dimming the lanterns, one by one, until only a single lamp remains, the one beside the violin. The little girl has already gone home, her steps light and joyful as she carried the borrowed violin as carefully as if it were a fragile dream. the shop feels quieter than usual, but not empty. The kind of quiet filled with things gently settling into place. Mara pours herself a cup of chamomile tea, the rising steam curling in soft spirals that catch the lantern glow. She sits near the window, listening to the faint city sounds outside. A distant violin from an open window, the murmur of cafe laughter, the soft hum of a streetcar drifting past. She turns her gaze back to the counter, where the violin had rested for 2 nights, surrounded by lavender. A single sprig remains there, its purple flowers glowing faintly in the lamplight. The breeze sneaks through the cracked window again, carrying cool night air and brushing through the shop like a soft hand smoothing a blanket. The lavender rustled, the lantern flame sways, and in the gentle hush of evening, Mara lets her eyes drift half closed, breathing slowly, deeply, letting the quiet cradle her, just as she cradles her flowers each day. Night settles fully over Vienna, laying a soft, velvety hush across the quiet street outside. Inside the flower shop, the last lantern flickers low, casting warm gold over the single sprig of lavender left beside the empty space where the violin had rested. Mara finishes her tea and rises slowly, blowing out the lantern with a gentle breath. The room sighs into darkness, a peaceful, fragrant dark, filled with lavender and the faintest memory of music that never needed words. She whispers, "Good night," to the quiet shop, to the flowers, and to the violin, now finding its next warm home. Then she closes her eyes and lets the night fold softly around her.